Good afternoon, Year 9. I hope you've had a good day. Apologies, I can't be in your lesson today. Someone in my household has COVID symptoms and had to go for a test yesterday, and therefore I've got to isolate until that test result comes through. I know how much you enjoy a nice, easy lesson on a Wednesday afternoon. I've designed this lesson so that you can complete a sheet as I'm narrating the PowerPoint, so hopefully enable you to learn enough information about this case study. Hopefully you might find it interesting, but also it won't be too stretching, as I know you're always very tired after a long day at the end of the day. So what we're looking at is why is Holderness coastline falling into the sea? So we've been looking at coastal erosion. Last lesson you looked at coastal defences, and you had an excellent lesson in which you were looking at different types of defence. You looked at hard engineering, you looked at soft engineering. Well, this time we're going to look at what decisions are made and why decisions are made and how decisions are made when it comes to deciding whether or not to defend a coastline or not. And as geographers, we always like to give specific examples of real life examples of where this has happened. So the picture you can see is of a town called Mapleton, which is in Holderness in the northeast, and you can already see, if you look at these cliffs, you can see that they look sandy, they look clayey, they don't look like really good solid rock. You can tell from the colour and the fact that they're slumping down and they're sliding down there. So whilst your cover teacher is playing this video, there will be certain points where I'll ask you to pause, and your cover teacher will press pause on the PowerPoint, and then you'll be asked to fill in one of the boxes on this sheet. So one box asks you to describe the location, another box asks you why the cliffs are eroding. So you'll fill these out as the lesson goes on. First thing I want you to do, however, if it's going to move forward, there we go. First thing I want you to do is to actually watch this video clip, and I've put the link to the video clip in the cover sheet for your cover teacher. It's a clip from BBC Learning. If the link doesn't work, just Google BBC Learning and the word Holderness, and this video clip will come up in the Google search. This clip is about two pig farmers who bought a house in this area in the Holderness coastline. And I think it gives some really good context to the area, and it really starts to show from a personal point of view how much of an impact coastal erosion has on people. Their house is now 19 metres or less even from the coastline, and they're in danger of losing their house, losing all their money, losing their business, their livelihood. So if you pause my video now, and if your cover teacher can play that video for you, it's about 5 minutes long, and then return to this video. Press pause now. Okay, great. So hopefully watch that video now. I always feel really sorry for those two individuals. Yes, they might have been naive buying their farm so close to the sea edge, but when they bought it in good faith, and their part of the cliffs are not eroding as much as they are now, or they were, because this case study is from the late 1990s. So where is Holderness? So as geographers, we always locate where we're talking about. So Holderness is in this part of the coastline along here. So you can see this is the Humber estuary, so the River Humber, and this is where a spit called Spurn Head is, and this is called Flamborough Head, which is a headland which sticks further out. And you know about headlands and spits because we've done them in coastal landform. So if I zoom in, you can see a couple of the towns along this. So this whole stretch is the Holderness coastline. So it's in the northeast of England. It's 61 kilometres, so the whole coastline is a large area, 61 kilometres, very, very popular with tourists. And it goes from Flamborough Head, it should be to Spurn Point in the south there. So what I'd like you to do on your A3 sheets is to actually now draw a sketch map of the Holderness coastline. I've done an example for you to get the idea of the sort of detail. This is the sort of detail you need. So the shape of the coastline there, obviously the main river, which is important. That should be Spurn Point, and Flamborough Head. And then naming some of the key towns. I've realised on this particular example, the town of Mapleton, or the village of Mapleton, is not marked on. If you see where Hornsey is, Mapleton is just south of Hornsey, about here where the cursor is now. So if you can also mark Mapleton on your maps, that would be great. If you pause the video now and give yourself 5 minutes to draw this sketch map. Okay, so welcome back. Hopefully you had the 5 minutes. You've drawn that sketch map. Again, it's not an artist's impression. A sketch map is just a clear map that shows the location of some of the key areas we're talking about. So next slide. So this is what your A3 sheet should look like now. You should have that box filled in with a sketch map. So why is Holderness coastline eroding? You can see here, I love some of these pictures. You can see the actual road there, which looks like that solid tarmac built upon this very loose looking material. You can see cracks in it. You can see how loose it looks here. If you go up to this coastline, you can literally pull bits of the cliff away. And here again, you can see how close these houses are to the edge of the cliff and the caravans. And I mean, if you're living in this house here, I don't think you'd sleep very well at night. So it's actually the fastest eroding coastline in all of Europe. The average annual rate of erosion is 2 meters per year, so they lose 2 meters of coastline every year, which adds up. And in bad years, when we have a bad winter, they can lose significantly more. Since Roman times, they've actually lost 29 villages, and this next map shows that quite well. So this green bit is the UK now. That's the northeast of England. This is the original coastline, but this bit shaded in orange here with the dotted line, this is the former coastline back in Roman times. So you can see there's actually 29 villages there that have been lost from this coastline. So why is it happening? Why is it going on? Well, it's mainly because of what the cliffs are made of. The cliffs are made of what we call boulder clay, very, very soft rock. The material, the material that's actually the towns are built on was actually only deposited, and we discussed this in yesterday's lesson, was actually only deposited by glaciers about 12,000 years ago. So if you look at this map at the bottom here, so this is the coastline. You see Spurn Point at the bottom and Flamborough Head there. The chalk was the original coastline. Sorry, I just flicked too far. The chalk was the original coastline. The boulder clay was actually deposited by glaciers about 12,000 years ago. So as glaciers moved over the UK, in the southeast and the northeast, they actually then deposited all the material that the glaciers had been carrying. Glaciers are like frozen rivers, I suppose. So they move, and as they move, they carry material. And so they just plonked all this stuff down. So in my mind, all the sea is actually doing is it's just eroding the coastline back to where it used to be. The problem is 12,000 years ago is a long time, so people forgot that this land shouldn't be there. And obviously, over that time, communities are built up, societies are built up, villages, towns, infrastructure have all built up on this land. So, reason number one, why the cliffs are eroding, they're made of really soft material known as boulder clay. Reason number two, there's a very strong wind, and the prevailing wind, that means the wind that occurs most often in that area, the direction of wind that area receives most often, is very strong. So that causes longshore drift to move the sand. So with the swash and the backwash, it moves the sand further along the coast. Yesterday we discussed that beaches are the best form of natural defence of any coastline. So if there's no beach there's no defence for these cliffs, and longshore drift move this beach away. Finally, as you'd have seen in the BBC video, the waves are really strong in this area. You get very strong destructive waves. There's quite a big fetch, quite a big distance that the waves travel, so they get very, very large and can be very destructive. So 3 reasons. If you pause the video now, and then on your sheet you can fill in some notes on why that coastline is eroding so quickly. Okay, so welcome back. Hopefully you filled that part of the worksheet in. Let's get this to click on, sorry. There we go. So what happened in this village of Mappleton? So Mappleton is one of the many villages along the Holderness coastline. So there's only around 50 properties there. In 1990 it was under threat from losing 30 houses and its main road. So 2 meters was being lost to sea, and so the main access road was only 50 meters away from the cliff edge. Now, yesterday we used the word infrastructure, and we said that infrastructure are things like roads, telecommunication lines, hospitals, schools. They're things that are in place that help a society and a country function. Infrastructure is very, very hard to replace, and it's very expensive to replace. If part of your infrastructure goes, it has a knock-on effect on lots and lots of things. So in this particular village, there's this road, the B something or other, which we'll have a look at the name of it a little bit later on. And this road was important. It was important because it gave access to a range of towns and villages for locals. It was important because in the summer, lots of tourists use this road to visit the area, and of course tourism brings money into the economy. And it was also important because it was used by local farmers to access their land and access their farms. So this particular road had to be saved, as well as, of course, the 30 or so houses which were under threat. And there's Mappleton there, just to remind you where it is. So on your worksheet now, if you press pause in a moment, can you please add notes about why Mappleton needed protecting? So what were the reasons why they decided that Mappleton was special and needed protecting? Press pause now. Okay, so hopefully you filled that part of the worksheet in. We're now going to move on to the next bit. So what did they actually do? So here's the road I was talking about, the B1242. That's the one that needed protecting. This is quite a nice satellite image. You can see there's still not many houses there. There's a few houses back here. The old post rooms, a farm, I think, here. What they actually did was they built 2 large rock groins out to sea. And you can see it better on this picture here. So they built a large rock groin out to sea here. And what the rock groin does is it traps the sand. If you look at this part of this side of the groin, look at that lovely beach that's built up there, providing protection. There we go, providing protection for the cliffs here. If you look on this side of the rock groin, there's no sand there anymore because the longshore drift process has been stopped. Now, whereas that's great because it means the groin's doing its job, it's trapped the beach and that area is being saved. Think about the impact that's going to have further down the coast. Think about the farmers you watched in the video at the start of the lesson. So by defending one area of the coastline, sometimes you can have a real negative impact further down the coastline. You've also got the rock armour here being built to protect the coastline. Looks like they've got some boulders at the bottom of the cliff there. And they also did some soft engineering. They also reduced the gradient of the cliff, so they made it less steep. And they planted lots of vegetation there to try and kind of bind it together and stop it from slumping downwards. This slide here just basically explains what I've just said. So perhaps if your cover teacher can press pause now, then you can read through the facts there, the cost of it, etc. So £2 million, a lot of money. And then if you can press pause and then fill out the sheet that says what did they do to defend the area. Press pause now. Okay, hopefully you've completed that bit now, so you've explained what was actually done at the area. Anytime you do something like this, you have positive benefits and you have negative consequences as well. So what were the positive benefits of this coastal defence scheme on the Holderness coastline at Mappleton? Well, number one, it worked. It was great. Mappleton is now safe. The road is safe. The houses are safe. They're no longer at risk. So it's done its job. Secondly, the construction of the rock groin created a much larger, higher beach. So that means that now the waves don't even reach the bottom of the cliff because the kind of beach is, the waves are breaking further out and the beach has added that layer of protection. A third benefit is you've got a nice beach now. It's going to be even more popular with tourists because tourists like beaches, so it could also improve the income of the area. What about the negatives? Well, obviously, by defending Mappleton, they've increased erosion further down the coast, and that's had an impact on people. You saw the pig farmers in the start of the video. There's also a lady called Sue Earle, who was quite famous at the time because she protested and took the council to court because her farm, it's really sad actually, her farm had to be knocked down and destroyed because it was forming a danger and it was going to fall into the sea. So the negatives were people further down the coast lost their livelihoods, lost their income, and lost their homes. So on your A3 sheet now, you should have almost all the boxes filled in. You just need to fill in the benefits and the negatives. Perhaps if I scroll back a slide, if your cover teacher can press pause now, you can complete that. Okay, welcome back. Hopefully you have completed that whole A3 sheet now, which is great. Finally, if you have time to do this section, when we're deciding to defend or not defend the coastline, there's various viewpoints involved. There'll be the councillors' viewpoints of farmers, tourists, people who own homes there, and people who live further down the coastline. On this slide is just a few examples of some different opinions. Now, you've watched the first video, you've listened to what we've discussed in this lesson and in previous lessons. I would like you in your books to answer these two questions below. Who would be in favour of protecting the coastline and why? So you might say tourists, local residents, and tell me why. And then who would be against protecting the coastline and tell me why. If you press pause now and complete that. Okay, so that's the end of the lesson. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you've not made fun of me too much for recording the lesson. And I'll hopefully be back in to see you next week. Have a great weekend.